everyone, it's Joe here from Draft FPL, and today I'm looking at the Chelsea-Salzburg game from the Champions League last week. Graham Potter's first game as Chelsea manager. I'm going to look into kind of the starting lineup, the average positions, how the team played, and how that's going to affect Chelsea assets in Draft FPL. Obviously, it's only one game. I'm just going to kind of do my best, make my best guesses from what we can see so far. Chelsea have obviously had quite a big gap between that game and their next game in the Premier League, so Potter will have quite a lot of time on the training ground to kind of sort things out. We'll see how they line up in their next game, but this is kind of best guesses we can make from that original game. If you enjoy this kind of video, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new. There's a link to our Patreon down below if you are interested in getting involved in our Discord server. Let's get stuck straight into the first topic, which is the Chelsea starting lineup. So as you can see, my first kind of thought when I saw this was Sterling left wing back. That's interesting. No Chilwell. Aubameyang and Havertz both start. I think Havertz being an option as well as Aubameyang kind of makes this season quite interesting, gives us another forward option to think about. So I was quite happy to see both of them start. Cucurella started. I think most people expected that. I will say, as soon as I saw it, I didn't think Sterling was going to be playing the sort of standard left wing back role that you would expect from most managers. I did expect him to be playing quite far forward, almost in that Trossard role that he's been playing for Brighton a lot this season, where it's kind of left wing back but also sort of left forward when they've got possession. And that is kind of how it turned out, but I'll go into that in a minute. I think no Koulibaly and no Fofana is quite interesting. Obviously Thiago Silva in the middle of the back three is no surprise. Cucurella left centre back makes sense. Obviously he's got a good relationship with Potter, so it's easy for him to implement his ideas through Cucurella. And then Azpilicueta right centre back did kind of raise an eyebrow initially, but the more I think about it, I think it does kind of make sense in the context of this game. And I think one thing to really try and remember about Potter is that he picks his lineups based on the opposition. He's not a system manager that like Klopp, who will pick a system and play that lineup as much as he can, obviously rest and rotate as he needs to, but Potter very much will play a lineup suited to the opposition. I think that's what they've done here today for the Salzburg game. Salzburg like to press very narrow and very aggressively, so Cucurella and Azpilicueta make sense because they're both comfortable at fullback as well, so they can stay really wide and try and escape that narrow press of Salzburg. So it just gives Chelsea a little bit more width. So I'm not convinced we'll see Azpilicueta in the lineup too much more. I think he will come in sort of as and when needed, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Fofana in that spot in the next game. Okay, so moving on to how Chelsea kind of position themselves through build-up play, because I think this is the most important, because Chelsea are going to have a lot of the ball in the Premier League. Most of their big chances are going to come from periods of possession, so it's really important to know how they're building up play and how each player is functioning in the build-up play to know who is the most likely to get goals and assists. That's kind of the way I think about it anyway. So looking at this is kind of how they build up. They had a real right side bias in the build-up play. So Azpilicueta, Mount, Havertz, James and Jorginho were all leaning over to that right-hand side, creating overloads in the half spaces between the full-back and the centre-back and the central midfielder on the left-hand side of Salzburg. So you saw Reece James, Mason Mount and Havertz combining a lot in that kind of right space. James playing really high up, as we expect, as he kind of always has done. And what this was doing is Aubameyang was kind of occupying the centre-backs, and that was kind of dragging the whole Salzburg team over to this side of the pitch. Sterling was playing really high and really wide on the left-hand side, just basically hanging out, waiting to attack that back post space, which is a really good thing. I mean, I came away from this game thinking Sterling is probably the second best Chelsea option, in my opinion, behind Reece James, just because obviously Reece James gets the clean sheets. We know how good his delivery is, and we know how good his finishing is as well, and he's going to be playing really high up the pitch. So Reece James for me definitely looks like the best option. He was so involved in almost every move that Chelsea kind of built up. I think Aubameyang is a little bit tougher. because he is occupying those central defenders. Havertz is moving freely from left to right in the kind of number 10 space between the defence and the midfield, and he was really good at it. And I expect Havertz to play quite a lot in this kind of role where he's just kind of drifting and linking the play, which works well for him. I don't think it screams loads of attacking returns, but obviously the more he's involved, he just will pick up assists and goals just by hanging around those advanced areas when Chelsea have a lot of high possession. I think the key thing, it looks to me like Potter is really trying to play to Sterling's strengths, which are running in at the back post and scoring goals. And that's exactly how the goal came about, and that's how they tried to exploit over and over again, isolating Sterling against the fullback and letting him run inside the fullback and either getting on the end of crosses or dribbling the ball and progressing through that way. I think Kovacic plays a big role in this as well, because he was kind of staying free on the kind of left centre space as the rest of the team were getting sucked over to that right hand side. So he was there ready to receive the ball for Jorginho and a quick switch out to Sterling, either to get him in behind the centre back or to play him in one-on-one against the fullback. This also then has the secondary benefit of creating a bit of chaos over on that left-hand side when the ball gets switched quickly, which will then, I think, leave Aubameyang quite free in the middle reasonably often as well, as the centre-back covering him will then shift over if Sterling can beat his man at fullback. I think it's not ideal for Cucurella, definitely from an attacking point of view, because he is kind of the only defensive player on the left-hand side of the pitch. As you can see from this kind of little position map I've got, he is basically the only person covering that side of the pitch, and that's pretty much how the goal went down. You know, he got caught and the ball got played in behind him. Thiago Silva went over to cover and got beat, and then, you know, it's basically a free goal from there. So I think Cucurella definitely will attack, and that there will be points where when they're building up slowly and Sterling's trying to beat his man, Cucurella will provide that overlap. But the way they played in this game didn't scream out for attacking options for Cucurella. And what they did do occasionally as well was kind of shift to a back four where James would sit a little bit deeper and Silva and Azpilicueta would rotate around a little bit and Cucurella would play more of a left back role. And in these kind of build-up scenarios, it worked a little bit better for him because he could progress a little bit up that left-hand side. But you know, we saw from the second half of last season at Brighton, Cucurella played this role a lot under Potter and didn't get that many attacking returns. I think he got 2 attacking returns last season, potentially, off the top of my head, which isn't ideal. And I don't see in this system him being involved too much. So let's move on to the average positions. And you can see here that, you know, they call it left wing back, but it's absolutely not a defensive position for Sterling. He was the most advanced player on the pitch. His average position was higher than anyone else's, so there's absolutely nothing to worry about there. I think he, you know, on paper and when they're out of possession, okay, maybe he'll be tracking back a little bit, but that left side defensive role is really Cucurella's responsibility. And as you can see here, Kovacic did play quite wide on the left-hand side as well, only slightly inside Cucurella and Sterling, so he's also there to cover that left-hand side. So Sterling doesn't have much defensive responsibility in this at all. The other ones I find kind of interesting, obviously Reece James, look how high he is, further up than all the midfielders. It's only Sterling, Havertz and Aubameyang that are further forward than Reece James. Obviously quite wide, but that's ideal. You know, his crosses are excellent, so that's where you want him to play. Also quite interesting to see Havertz and Aubameyang also basically on top of each other. This is, I think, due to the fact that Aubameyang was kind of occupying the centre-backs and then pulling in infield a little bit and trying to release Mount and Kovacic to run beyond him. And Havertz was kind of drifting in and out the whole of the pitch, really. So his average position is quite central and quite high up, but in reality he was actually roaming quite far from that average position. So in terms of Draft FPL then, players I think that have potential to gain some value. Sterling I think is top of the list. As I said, they're really trying to play to his strengths, it looks like, in this system anyway, and that is him arriving at the back post and getting those tap-ins that he's kind of known for, really. So I think that's really good for him. I think the only other way that they could potentially play is moving Sterling on further forward and having potentially Chilwell play that left wing back role in kind of more of a fashion that Estupiñán did for Brighton once he came in. But that's not a bad thing for Sterling either, to be honest. He can play that role easily further up the pitch. So I don't think that is anything to worry about, really. I think this is good news for Sterling, to be honest. Just I think the attack as a whole is going to function better, and that's going to benefit him specifically. And on that note as well, Mason Mount, I think, is definitely going to go up in value. It's the kind of pick, it's the kind of buy low pick that I would be advocating people trying to get in on a trade for someone like Pascal Gross, for instance, because that is basically this very similar role that he's going to be playing. He's in that kind of number 8 where I think he really thrives. He's going to see a lot of the ball on the right-hand side, combining with Havertz and Reece James and potentially Azpilicueta or whoever the right centre-back is. So he's going to see a lot of the ball, which I think he likes, gets a lot of touches, and then he's going to be pushing on beyond Havertz and Aubameyang into space when the defenders are pulled away. So I think attacking returns are going to come for Mount, and I think he's a good pick. And Havertz is basically exactly the same. I think a lot of people thought when Aubameyang came in that Havertz was done, but he is a really talented player, and I think if you were going to think to the Brighton team that are doing so well this year, who is most similar to Pascal Gross, it is Havertz. They are very similar types of players, but I think Havertz does have more quality than Pascal Gross, and I can really see Havertz flourishing under Potter, to be honest. So he's another player that I think if you can get on the cheap might be a good pick. Obviously, this is only one game. We're not 100% sure if Havertz is going to start week in, week out. We don't really know if any of these players are going to start week in, week out. But I do think his value is going to go up from where it is now, which is pretty low. And finally, the other player I'm looking at is Kovacic. Kovacic has always played quite deep under Tuchel. He often played in a midfield 2 and didn't really have much license to get forward. But in this kind of midfield diamond, in that left-hand number 8, I think it really suits him because he was hanging about in so much space in the left side of the central midfield. Whenever the ball got switched to him, he was trying to play penetrating passes for Sterling or run beyond Aubameyang if there was space. So I do think Kovacic is actually going to be a sneaky good pick for attacking returns for this Chelsea team, especially when they've got good fixtures and he's got more license to get forward. And unfortunately, players that I think value might go down. First of all, we have Chilwell. As I said, it was Sterling at left wing back, which as a Chilwell owner was quite disappointing. But I don't think this means it's curtains for Chilwell. I just think he's not going to start week in, week out. The fact that he didn't even come off the bench is quite disconcerting as well. But I do think, as I said, Potter lines up teams based on the opposition, and there will be teams where he'll want that extra width and have Sterling in a front 3 and Chilwell potentially left wing back. He could put Cucurella in that left wing back slot, but we haven't actually seen him do that for quite a long time now, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Chilwell come in at left wing back and Cucurella left centre back. But like I said, his minutes are going to be more sporadic, you would think now, so I'm not dropping him just yet. I'm going to keep him a couple of weeks and see what happens. But if we don't get any bulk of minutes soon, then it might be curtains. Next up, we've got Koulibaly. And this one I think is quite interesting because Koulibaly obviously has been playing that left centre-back role, kind of a Rudiger replacement. And I think Cucurella is going to play there more often than not, to be honest. So I struggle to see where Koulibaly fits in. I'm not convinced he'll play the central of the 3. I'm not sure he's got the ball playing ability of someone like Thiago Silva to pull that role off, which then leaves the right centre-back role for, one of him, Azpilicueta and Fofana, who's also on this list. And I'm not sure if it's going to be Koulibaly. I mean, there will be games where Koulibaly will potentially play left centre-back and Cucurella will play left wing-back maybe, but I'm not really sure about that either because I don't know if that's got the same sort of balance that a lineup like they had today will have, because they will really want to provide width. Cucurella's end product isn't as good as a lot of people think. I don't think it is good, but it's not great. It's not up to the level of someone like Sterling or Chilwell. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the likes of Koulibaly and Fofana because it just doesn't seem like there's enough slots in the team for them all to play. I could maybe see Fofana playing in the centre of the back 3, but I'm not really sure about that either. I think that role is kind of tailor-made for Thiago Silva. So we'll have to wait and see how it shakes out. But I do think two of Koulibaly, Fofana and Thiago Silva probably aren't going to play, so we need to know which ones are going to play and which ones aren't, and I do see a potential value drop in these. And the last player that I think value might go down is Aubameyang, mainly because with the Tuchel relationship, it was such a high, it was a kind of a good fit. They had a lot of previous history, and we thought that it might work reasonably well anyway. But with obviously Tuchel gone, Potter in, okay, Aubameyang started and played okay in the Salzburg game, but he didn't have too many chances, and for a lot of the game, it seemed more like he was just occupying the centre-backs and creating space for other players in a very similar way to Danny Welbeck has so far this season. He's played really well, and it's a good role for the team, but him personally doesn't see too much reward from it because he is just occupying defenders a lot of the time and creating space for other players. And the other thing is that Brozier came on for Aubameyang towards the end of the game and looked really good and played that role really well. Also had a couple of chances to win the game, so we could potentially see Potter switch to Brozier at some point. And I do think Brozier kind of suits the way Potter likes his forwards to play. He is very good at occupying defenders and keeping them on their toes. So I have to wait and see on that. I don't think Aubameyang's at risk for losing his place at the moment, but I'm just saying potentially down the line his value could go down. And that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this kind of content, then hit the like button and let me know in the comments if you want to see any more of these during the international break. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we'll see you next time.